This video tells the story of one of the most brilliant criminal masterminds in the world, operating from the shadows of South Africa, Vito Palozzolo, also known as the Cosa Nostra banker. Palozzolo masterminded an incredibly sophisticated money laundering operation. He created a vast web of shell companies spanning multiple industries and countries, generating billions of dollars while evading the watchful eye of the law. But Palozzolo's genius wasn't just in his financial acumen. He built powerful alliances not only with notorious mafioso figures, but also with intelligence agencies from several countries, including South Africa, which shielded him from Italian authorities and Interpol. Allegedly, Vito served as the personal banker of the boss of bosses of the infamous Corleone crime family in Sicily, Salvatore Toto Riina. Now, Riina was a ruthless who led the most brutal and powerful criminal organization in Italy. Now, in this video, we'll dive into Vito Palozzolo's meteoric rise within Cosa Nostra and uncover the profound influence he wielded over Cape Town's underworld.
I'm very happy to go back home.
Vito managed the investment portfolio of the late Salvatore Toto Riina, who was an imprisoned head of the notorious Corleone clan, often called the boss of bosses. Palozzolo spent his adult life as one of the most trusted financiers and skilled investors for the Sicilian Mafia, also known as Cosa Nostra. For over 20 years, he evaded justice while amassing extraordinary wealth. He controls a vast empire of gold, diamonds, luxury properties, and billions hidden in offshore accounts. He also has a network of proxies to protect his assets from confiscation. However, his most valuable asset is the knowledge he holds. Italian prosecutors consider this information critical, not just for mafia-related matters, but also for its connections related to state officials, from apartheid regime in South Africa, the ANC government, and other governments around the world, and also influential business figures. Vito was born in Terracini, Sicily. Some reports suggest that he was orphaned, although the fate of his parents remains unclear. He grew up in his great-grandfather's house, who was a well-known Sicilian bandit and a shooter, who was sentenced to life imprisonment for carrying out assassinations. As a teenager, Vito lived in Switzerland for 2 years. He also worked briefly as a chef on a cruise ship, where he met his first wife, a German woman, who later they had 2 children together. Around 1967, Vito worked at Deutsche Bank. After a year, he became a private banker within the bank. Now, shortly after, he moved to Switzerland, where he worked as a banker and also got involved in the precious stone business. Now, during this time, he met a young mafioso named Antonino Madonia, the son of one of the Sicilian godfathers. Nino and Vito worked together in dealing with precious stones and metal, and they were also involved in laundering money for the mob. Reports suggest that Nino Madonia was the one who formally introduced Vito to the Sicilian Cosa Nostra. Before long, Vito was a made man, or a man of honor, joining a family led by Antonio Gerasi in Palermo, Sicily. Vito was known to be a close ally of the Corleone clan, especially Salvatore Toto Riina. Early on, he reportedly supplied the clan with weapons and explosives during the Mafia wars. However, Vito's real talent was in banking and money laundering, which became his superpower. Over time, Vito grew very close to Riina, who was the boss of the Corleone crime family, widely known as the boss of bosses. Riina was a fugitive who lived in hiding for over 30 years. He was a ruthless who rose to power in the Mafia through extreme violence. Now, Riina eliminated anyone in his way, from judges, prosecutors, police officers, politicians, even families. Anyone could get it with him. Now, his reputation as a dangerous and powerful man was unmatched. Riina, who was hiding from the law, trusted Vito to manage his financial affairs. Vito, known as Cosa Nostra's banker, handled the clan's money by hiding, laundering, and investing it. but Vito's sophistication in laundering money was next level. The law tried to follow the money so they could bring down the Corleones, but they couldn't, all thanks to Vito's genius schemes. See, Vito's genius in working with money really brought the Sicilian Mafia into the modern era financially. You see, his skills and connections helped the Corleone clan move up to the next level, who were the undisputed leaders of Cosa Nostra after the Mafia wars of the 1980s. By 1981, Vito had become highly skilled in managing and hiding cash and assets. Recognizing his expertise, the Sicilian bosses appointed him to lead a team of Swiss bankers tasked with laundering profits from a $1.6 billion dope trade between Turkey and the United States. At the time, most of the world's H or dope came from Turkey. Farmers in small communities harvested poppy milk, which local dealers processed into base. Now this was transported through the Balkans regions, Italy, Sicily and France to laboratories that refined it into, which was then smuggled into the US. It was a highly profitable but dangerous business, and this scheme was known as the Pizza Connection.
A former head of the Sicilian Mafia and 16 other reputed organized crime figures convicted yesterday of running one of the biggest heroin smuggling rings ever uncovered. The New York trial took 17 months to complete at a cost of several $1 million. The defendants had been accused of smuggling more than $1.5 billion worth of drugs into the United States alone. The trial was marred by violence. One of the defendants was critically wounded in an apparent mob hit in Manhattan earlier this year. Last December, a second was found murdered outside a Brooklyn bakery. Prosecutors say the ring spanned several countries, and the convictions are a major blow to organized crime.
I think the impact on the Mafia of these cases and the convictions today have been devastating. The organization, if this continues, and it should continue, the efforts by the DEA and the FBI and the Customs Service and the U.S. Attorney's offices, if it continues, there's not going to be a Mafia.
The dope trade lasted from 1985 to 1987 and ended with 21 convictions out of 22 defendants. Now this trial was the first to reveal the massive global reach of the Italian mafioso. Now Swiss authorities investigated part of the operation and uncovered evidence showing that at least $47 million in dope money had been laundered through Switzerland. And Vito was in the middle of it all. On Christmas Eve of 1986, during a 36-hour prison pass, Vito escaped to South Africa. At the time, the country had already become a refuge for other Cosa Nostra gangsters and served as Vito's initial base of operations. Vito didn't need any help from other Cosa Nostras to establish himself in South Africa. He was no ordinary fugitive. He had the skills, the knowledge, connections, and most importantly, the capital stashed in offshore accounts to start a new business career. He quickly proved valuable to powerful figures in South Africa and began exchanging favors with the local elite. One of the most prominent examples was Big Botha, the long-serving Foreign Affairs Minister. Now Botha, deeply involved in South Africa's mineral, military and trade activities, influencing both past and ongoing conflicts in Africa. Now Vito chose his allies very carefully. Now Botha was the one who helped Palozzolo obtain a South African citizenship, even though he was on Interpol's most wanted list at the time. Now during the sanctions of apartheid, Vito was helping some powerful people in South Africa move money, even goods like precious metals and stones, in and out of the country bypassing sanctions. Remember, he was already doing it for the Mafia anyway. In South Africa, Vito changed his name to Robert Van Palis Kolbachenko. He also married a second wife, an Israeli South African woman. He also bought a lot of properties in Cape Town and a farm in Franschhoek where his family lived. Now on that farm, he operated a bottling company as part of his growing business ventures. In 1995, the Italian police launched an investigation into what they called the South African chapter of Cosa Nostra. Initially, South Africa appeared to be cooperative. Now later on in 1996, Nelson Mandela authorized the creation of a specialized unit in investigating the Italian Mafia's activities in the country. Agent Andre Lincoln, who led the investigation, worked with maximum secrecy. He went undercover, building a personal relationship with Palozzolo in the hope of uncovering clues about corruption within the South African government, identifying who could be trusted and who had been compromised by the Mafia. Now Vito was also involved in the mining industry in Angola. In 1997, while on an undercover mission to Angola, Lincoln reported it's very difficult to dismantle what Vito has built in Angola. The South African chapter of Cosa Nostra posed a serious threat to state securities because Palozzolo had many hidden agendas and had built strong ties with the security and intelligence establishments of foreign countries where he operated from. Lincoln's investigation began to unsettle many powerful figures. Now in 1998, he was abruptly removed from his role and accused of corruption, theft and fraud by fellow police officers. Now 10 years later, Lincoln was cleared of all charges, but by then the investigation into Vito and his networks had been significantly undermined. South Africa had shown a clear intention to protect the mobster rather than pursue justice.
He was handpicked by former President Nelson Mandela to head the Presidential Investigation Task Unit set up to look into alleged irregular conduct by senior police officers in the province. Alleged Italian Mafia member Vito Palozzolo was said to be connected to certain senior police officers. Former President Mandela then instructed the then National Police Commissioner, George Fivers, that Lincoln would not report to any structures of the SAPS, but to him directly. Major General Andre Lincoln told the court that the establishment of the Presidential Task Team received a lot of flack from senior members of the SAPS. He says while they knew full well that the unit was a secret, they constantly wanted to know what it entailed. He said the unit received a lot of sabotage and was prevented from doing its work. After the establishment of the unit, the top cop was arrested and charged with 47 counts, including fraud, drunken driving, and theft. He was convicted on 17 of the charges and was sentenced to 9 years imprisonment in 2003. However, he was subsequently acquitted on appeal. Now Lincoln has come out guns blazing, saying that this prosecution was malicious. He is now suing the state for 15 million rand. More details on criminal police activities are likely to emerge as the case continues.
Palozzolo set up another company in the British Virgin Islands to acquire shares in Russia's Lomonosov mine, the largest diamond mine in Europe, containing an estimated $12 billion worth of precious stones. Now the $2.3 million used for the acquisition came partly from his own company in Liechtenstein and partly from Ashton Mining, a major Australian mining company. Now Palozzolo had entered a joint partnership with Ashton Mining for this venture. Now this seemingly straightforward deal previously uncovered and demonstrated how Vito, while based in South Africa, channeled funds into Russia, Angola, South Africa, and different business ventures, using a mix of Cosa Nostra money, his own capital, and clean funds from legitimate corporations. He accomplished this by taking advantage of offshore banking secrecy. Finmeccanica, now known as Leonardo, is a public company with the Italian Ministry of Economics holding the majority of its shares. In 2013, it had a turnover of 16 billion euros and employed over 60,000 people. Now, one of Finmeccanica's key subsidiaries is Austa Westland, a military helicopter manufacturer. It produces the Westland Lynx, known as the fastest helicopter in the world, used by armed forces of 13 countries including Germany and the UK. Now, Austa Westland's largest deal in South Africa was highly controversial. In 1995, the South African Army signed a 4.5 billion euros arms deal that included 30 Augusta helicopters with approximately 300 million euros, along with other weapons and military vehicles. While based in the Western Cape, Palozzolo was suspected of having several controversial local figures working as soldiers for the Cosa Nostra. Among them was Cyril Beaker, a rumored intelligence operative and nightclub security kingpin. Now, these individuals were believed to be involved in crimes such as firearms smuggling, dope dealing, illegal diamond trading. Now, despite these suspicions, Vito was never convicted of any crimes in South Africa and maintained strong connections in the country. Now, according to reports, he was the one who put Cyril Beaker in the extortion game and helped him to establish a strong team. Now, Vito was alleged to have his own personal security team known as the Moroccan Gang, who also worked with Beaker in the extortion rackets, allegedly. Eventually, Interpol captured Vito in Bangkok. Now, in 2009, an Italian court had sentenced him in absentia to 9 years in prison for his association with the Mafia. Now, at the time of his arrest, he had been living in South Africa under the alias Robert Van Pales Kolbachenko. Now, Italian authorities reportedly tracked him to Thailand by monitoring his family's activities on Facebook. After serving his sentence, Vito returned to South Africa, even though he had minor issues entering the country due to his passport being flagged because of his criminal activities or his previous criminal activities.